Good evening and welcome to After Hours. It is my pleasure and joy to have our next guest, John Aitken. And I want to describe you as a creative artist, dancer, choreographer, carver, playwright. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I want to start off by sort of getting a picture of you, your beginnings, your life. You came from a large family. Where were you in the family circle? Okay. I'm trying to picture where this little boy came from. Can you talk about your family a bit?
Talk about my family. I am one of 7 kids. I was second to last in the lineup. I had one sister. All 6 boys and 1 girl. So it was an interesting. Like when I was thinking about today, I wasn't sure how to talk about it sort of needs to be immediately spoken about how I didn't speak until I was 17.
Yes, I was going to.
Yeah. So to put that out there immediately is, I think, necessary because that's what makes my childhood different, unique and different in a way that. And the question I hear a lot is, why didn't you speak? And I really don't know why I didn't speak. A lot of my family was quiet. My mom was Coast Salish, and my dad was a Scottish guy.
Okay.
Yeah. So and thinking about today and thinking about like how much to put out there in the reality of what was happening when I was a kid is it was a lot of alcoholism. It was a lot of domestic abuse. It was a lot of beatings. It was a lot of
violence.
A lot of dysfunction. So as a kid experiencing that, I didn't know how to, I didn't know where to put any of that. None of it made any sense. So thinking about second to last in the family and thinking about how my mom passed when I was 7.
Okay.
So she died when I was quite young. So and then my dad, probably because of all the alcohol that he drank, he passed away when I was 13. So I was an orphan at 13.
And so what happened after that for the family? Like, who took care of you? And
after Dad died, I'll go back to Mom. When Mom died, my dad went into this serious depression, and it just became chaos, even more chaos. He didn't drink as much. And he didn't have anybody to really beat up then because Mom was gone. Because I remember Mom screaming a lot because she was being beaten again by Dad. And as a little Coast Salish woman, she was tiny, and my dad was a big Scottish guy. So it was quite terrifying as a kid.
It's serious, no matter how you look at that.
Yeah, but just the being in bed at night as a kid and hearing your mother screaming because you know what's going on in the other room is Mom's being beaten again. So.
And what about the kids in terms of him? It was for your mother and not for his children? Like did he use that violence against the children or no?
He did in a different way. Like it was like I remember like being beaten by him if I did something that I wasn't supposed to do. But I think that's what happens in the kid's brain, like when you're not making any sense of what's going on. And like I said, I sort of go back to not speaking until I was 17, so I wasn't vocalizing. I wasn't able to ask questions, and then when you think about like a kid that's not speaking, and then 7 moms gone, sort of the only protection in your life is gone, and then you're left with Dad. And it's like, okay, now what do I do? This was the only one that is there to protect me is now gone. Like my dad being the way he was, he didn't even let any of the kids go to her funeral. So it was quite the. So I was trying to think about setting like what it was like in a small community, especially with only, I think at that time, Main Island had only about maybe 300 people.
This was my next question, actually. Like a picture of Main Island. Like, what did it look like then? Like, now there's true value, there's this, there's people, you know. So, yeah, continue with that picture of Main Island. It must have been very isolating, actually.
It was isolating, but it was also a kid's paradise in a way, because we were allowed to, like, well, I think about my mom being Native and my dad being a non-Native with some Haida blood in him, but I identify as being a Native man. But thinking that as a Native kid, having all the woods to just be able to go play, and that was actually the only place.
And safe that way.
It was safe, yes. Yeah, there wasn't any, you were out of the house, away from Dad, and away from all that violence, so.
Well, I know for myself, because I had a troubled family, that my escape was school. I could get out of the house and go to a place where I was treated nicely. And what helped you, gave you your strength? And part of that question is, where did you learn your Native culture?
Oh, I didn't learn any. I remember Mom speaking her native language. But because I was like 7, not speaking, so I wasn't learning any of the language or any of the culture, and not being on the reserve too. And then when she did pass, like all the Native side of my family stopped coming around. So, but going back to like what it was like, it was green and lush, and there was hardly any people, and all the roads were dirt roads, and we actually lived on a small little road called Deacon Road, which was right beside the school, and we used to like get beat up by the white kids all the time because we were the dirty little Indians. We always had headlights. We were always we didn't have new clothes. We had dirty clothes, and we lived in pretty extreme poverty. And we like ate like wild meat, a lot of fish, and a lot of deer meat, and so.
It's amazing how things have changed so quickly.
Going back to Main Island 15 years ago, being away for about 20 years, it's a very different reality. Island. Yeah, but still that small community. Like there's only about 1,000 now, and it's still small. Everybody knows.
We won't talk about that.
We won't talk about that's another day.
One of my first thoughts when I found out you didn't speak for 17 years was the reality of so many Native children going to residential schools where they were silenced. They couldn't talk to each other. They couldn't talk in their language, and then they couldn't talk to their brothers and their sisters. And I guess you mentioned school. Like, how did you cope? How did people react, and how did you cope? Like, how did you go to school, and how did you communicate?
That was, okay, well, where do I begin with that? Because of the racism on the island, being beaten up by the white kids a lot, like a lot of my family at one point, just all of us quit going to school because we got so tired of just being beat up. So my schooling, like not speaking until I was 17, was special too. Like I quit in grade 2 going to school. But then there was a period of time that I got tired of being home. So I wanted to go back to school. Like even if I wasn't speaking, I knew that I needed to go back. So at 12 years old, I went back to grade 2.
Wow.
And
that must have caused a bunch of
it was
turmoil or stress or something because you're older, and
it was embarrassing. They had I remember going back, and they had to bring in an extra big desk because there's a new kid in class, and he's a big kid, and he's a lot older than the other ones. So and then at the same time, like my youngest brother was in grade 2 at the same time, so he was the right age, and I was. So I can't imagine how he felt
But you must have been very strong. Like, it must have been a real inner strength there to be able to do that.
I don't know. Well, I don't know where it came from. There was, I think, what I think about now as a 47-year-old man is the Native, the spirit in me that just knew things, understood things would get better, that what was happening in this house wasn't supposed to be happening.
Wasn't the whole world and the whole reality.
No, it was there was that understanding. Where that came from, I have no idea, especially with not speaking, going to school and not speaking and being able to. You asked like how I communicate it. I would point and I'd write notes and I would gesture and just make and
expressions and
point and just be quiet and any way I could without saying anything, of course. Like what is a tool? You can point, you can write something down. Luckily I was bright enough to be able to, so going back to the schooling, so I finished grade 2, but because I was so much older, they skipped me from grade 2 to grade 5. And then they skipped me from grade, I did all of grade 5, and then I skipped grade 6 and 7, and then I went straight into grade 8 without speaking. So luckily I've always been...
you must have been good at writing,
I was
obviously, at communicating that way and with words.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I was an AB student, so something up in my brain. There wasn't anything neurological, whatever wasn't. That was fine. It was just the verbalizing. Going back to, I honestly don't know why, out of 7 kids, I was the one that didn't speak the most. It doesn't make any sense to me today, being the second to last of 7 kids, that for whatever reason, I was the one that didn't speak until much later. Like all my other siblings spoke. There was some problems with some of the speech, but me, it wasn't until later, until I was almost given an ultimatum. Like I either learn to sign or I speak. So I decided to speak.
And speaking of speaking, the gift.
Can
you, and that the gift came from your silence. Can you tell us about the gift?
The gift started from a very casual conversation with a dear friend now, Gail Noonan, who's a very talented animator. She used to teach animation at Emily Carr. We were just having a casual conversation, and it came up that I didn't speak until I was 17, and what that meant. And during that time, she was working with a theater group on Pender Island, and they had my understanding is that they sort of lost their native section of their production. So she was kind of thinking of when she left that conversation, she thought, okay, well, could we do something? Her and I, could we do something with that fact? And I didn't think so. Like I was going to be doing wood carving, and I was doing photography, and I wanted to continue with doing some filmmaking and that side of my life. But when I went away, I went, okay, well, yeah, I've done all the healing, and let's do something. I'll go back to stage, because I used to be in a dance company and had that part of my life, and when I was younger, but that was quite a bit younger. So, but I just I walked away from that and just said, yeah, let's look at doing something. And so the beginning was we literally just sat down at a table and just started writing notes, and all I could do with the fragmented memories of a kid not speaking was memories. So we took about, like, some of the scenes is the death of Mom, for sure, Mom getting beat again, Dad dying. So pivotal moments that I knew that were clear in a kid's mind. Mm-hmm. So, and then taking those notes and somehow piecing them together the best that I could, to be able to tell a story about, like, why, how, like, it begins, like, the gift begins when I'm a baby. So this big guy here, 220 pounds, plays a baby at the beginning of this piece of theater. So
that must have been incredible for you too, going through, I'll call it a play, but it's sort of, because it is silent, so I want you to talk a bit about that. But it must have been powerful for you to perform it and be part of that.
Well,
retelling.
while retelling and thinking that, like, going back to the initial conversation I had with Gail on the ferry and saying, oh yeah, let's do something because I've done all the healing. But then when we got into it, I just kind of went, no, I'm not quite done the healing because stuff started coming up, issues started coming up, and it was an intense process, and I'm really thankful for Gail and having a strong woman to be able to co-write this with, because she just sort of kept me grounded and was there when I did get emotional, and she's just as sensitive as I am, but it was a really good connection with her and I to be able to create this piece with no dialogue. And her, that's not her background either, but she was absolutely
very interesting,
amazing. Yeah.
So when and how did dancing come into your life?
Oh,
Wow.
I think as the only thing I could think of is when I was really young. I was probably 15 or 16. It was in the 80s, and there was breakdancing. Oh, and I remember being really excited about breakdancing. Then it was when I went to see Flash Dance that I went, I have to dance. So I started not just breakdancing, started with breakdancing, but then there was a guy on Main Island, surprisingly, in the small community that was teaching jazz dance classes. Oh, wow. So, and then he took me to Victoria, where I then was introduced to other dancers.
Forms of dancing.
Yeah. So.
And you've done ballet.
A little bit of ballet. Only because I say that because I started like late too, sort of at the point that when I started speaking, I started dancing at about the same time. So.
Oh, that's interesting.
So starting dancing at an older age when.
I know, but it's the form and the bar, and it's not necessarily that you're going to become, I was going to say ballerina, but that's not the right word.
It's not.
Ballet dancer, right? But just that you would have that, what's the word? Form or tradition, that you would have tried that and had that in your life in terms of dancing. It's amazing.
I see it as for all forms of dance, it's the foundation to me of all dance. You need, I think if you're going to be a dancer, you need to have ballet, because it provides you with the foundation. The balance and the structure and the discipline of being able to play without having to think about it all that much. So.
Now, you had a lead role in the production of Puss in Boots.
Yes, that
sounds so big to me, and I want you to talk a bit about that.
This is going back in time. I'm just probably around, I would guess about 20 years old. So that's like 27 years ago. The lead, the guy that was to be the lead, for some reason had to step down, and so there was John. So
you went for it.
I went for it, and I thought, okay, well, I can do this. Because of my limited experience, so the choreography was left relatively simple, but I had to run. I was in almost every scene, so it was intense.
Good experience.
Good experience, yes.
Lots learned.
Yes, yeah.
So you mentioned already that your mother dies in The Gift, and I was going to ask you who was the woman who, I thought it was a woman who died in that. Now there's a hooting owl. I don't know how often it is. I haven't seen this performance, but what is the significance of the owl in the play?
In the play, for Salish people, Coast Salish people, when I was a kid, one thing that I remember that my mom saying, and other native Coast Salish women saying, is that, and other Coast Salish people, period, saying is that when we as Coast Salish people pass on, we come back as owls.
That's a nice thing to come back as, I'd say.
So that's why. So it's used as, because there is no dialogue, so we needed to create some sound. So we used jiggling of change and hooting, and at the end I do my best to do some native style singing. So yeah.
Who is the Boogie Woman?
The Boogie Woman. The Boogie Woman in the piece is we had to find a way to for two people being on stage for 50 minutes, how do create, well, what do we have in our sort of, say, bag of tricks that we can create this mood of what Dad created in the environment that we grew up in? So we took sort of classic European, what do you call them, not archetypes or characters, and used them as because it was this boogie woman and trickster and sort of, but we used those to put together box Dad, like what Dad was doing, like it was the craziness, the like when you thought, like there was a scene where I'm sort of doing a freestyle dance and still feel like I'm free in the woods and I'm playing in the bushes, but then all of a sudden Dad comes on and it's Boogie Woman, but Boogie Woman isn't Boogie Woman. It's just an essence of what my dad was. Like you always, there was times that you thought we were alone or I was alone, but oh no, Dad's there. He's always there because of what he did in our heads. He made us just always be a little. It's putting it simply. He sort of made us paranoid and always thinking that we were never sort of safe. So you can imagine, like when Mom went, like how that
would carry. You would carry that on, or you had put that in you.
Yeah, and that just, what do you do? Mom's gone and left with Dad, and that's another scene, like when Dad dies, and then it's like, now I'm just left with Dad, and I'm terrified of Dad, and so what? Now what's going to happen?
What happened after your dad died? Did you still carry your father with you? I mean, I know we all carry those things with us, but I mean, you know what I mean, like really in your...
Mm-hmm. Well, and to today, I still carry Dad in me. Like sometimes I'll catch myself being in a space, or I'll get... I think we all know about like smell memories or body memories, or if somebody touches me in a way or something, then I'll get triggered, or I smell something, cigarettes, because my dad was a chain smoker, so if I smell cigarette smoke, it's like, oh, is he? Yeah, so it's that. So when Dad died, my oldest brother looked after me until I was 13 to 17. And so 17 was when I moved away from home, when I started speaking. Yeah, key age when things started really shifting. And
So quickly this time is running out. So I want to ask you, what is happening to the gift now?
The gift, I've been applying for Canada Council grants. And fortunately, third try lucky, yes. So I've been working on, I need to like really say out loud and be clear with how appreciative I've been about working with Presentation House Theatre in North Vancouver with Kim Saloti, who is the artistic director of Presentation House, and how supportive he's been. So I've been working with him for at least 3 years, and he actually came to Main Island and watched a performance of The Gift. And thought this needs to be out there. So his support has been amazing. Incredible. Yeah, it's been incredible. So the successful grant application means that I get to perform The Gift 5 times at Presentation House Theatre. Sometime the earliest would be this fall.
So and hopefully people will.
Yeah,
there'll be an opportunity. I'll be able to go and see it, which I really would like to do. Okay, we don't have that much time, but just quickly, you're working on another. I know. I've got so much. There's so much we could talk about. But why this book? And what are you doing as this project?
Well, as quickly as a Native activist, growing up in a small community, I was wanting to do something in connection with the I don't know more movement and the Truth and Reconciliation movement that's going on with Native people in Canada especially, but also in America to a point. So I thought, 1,000 people on Main Island, what is a gentle, accessible way to start communicating too, to start
and
a dialogue.
Having information.
Yes. So this book, The Inconvenient Indian by Thomas King, I thought was a great. So I came up with the concept of creating a book challenge, took it to the Main Island Library, and they took it and flew with it. And also too, I need to say, Lynn Tanaka, who owns Miners Bay Books on Main Island, she's involved with this challenge too. So been very, very supportive and very thankful.
Quickly, so people are reading this book, and then you're having gatherings and a talking circle, and we have like a couple of minutes, but...
Okay. Well, part of the process of this, because of the intensity of the subject, I've agreed to, as part of the process, for me, I can't just ask people to read the book and then just process it, so I wanted to open myself up to being part of that dialogue, and so I... every about 2 months, the challenge runs from January 1st to June 21st, which is National Aboriginal Day. So that's when this book challenge ends. So every 2 months or so, I facilitate a talking circle it gives people an opportunity to talk about the book, but also to talk to a Native person about
just whatever questions they may have.
Yeah. So it's I call it, in a circle, it's sacred time. So it's a time for people to be safe and being able to speak from a safe place.
You know what we're going to have to do? We're going to have to do this again, because there's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about here. And then maybe closer to when the gift comes to North Vancouver.
That sounds good.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us.